It's time for our Big Ten championship predictions. And I think this conference is definitely going to have their favorites this season. You got Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon. And the Buckeyes end up coming out on top as the first place team, not losing a single game all year. Penn State, with the head-to-head win over Oregon, eliminates the Ducks from the conference championship game. All of these teams over nine projected wins and right around seven projected conference wins, one clear of Washington, who is a surprising team, actually, I think, to most people, where we have finishing 10-2. They get the head-to-head tiebreaker over Illinois, rounding out our top five teams in the conference.
And right behind Illinois is Indiana. Both these teams have a lot of preseason hype to maybe make another push in the Big Ten. Illinois looking to be this year's Indiana, and they do finish ahead of Indiana in the standings with one more conference win, with that head-to-head win being the difference maker. If Indiana were to get that head-to-head win, then Indiana would be tied with Washington, and then we'd have to go through the whole tiebreaker thing again. But Illinois makes it a lot easier with their own win. But both these teams have the high expectations, but their schedules don't really allow them to have the same sort of success Indiana did last year. Both play some of the better teams in the Big Ten this season. So seeing either of them go 8-1 this year and maybe getting into the Big Ten Conference Championship is a bit of a long shot, but still very solid seasons for both of these teams.
And then this next pairing of teams with Minnesota and Michigan State, separated by one conference win, but I think they're going to have very similar type seasons, and we are much higher on these teams than anybody else really in the country. I think Drake Lindsey is going to have a great year in his first season as Minnesota's starting quarterback. Aiden Chiles should be much better in year two for Michigan State. Both of these teams should be very good. I think the key thing to note here is that Minnesota's projected records are much closer to their predictions, whereas we have Michigan State outperforming their projections by a lot more, which is why they end up finishing so close in the standings here.
And then in the next tier, you have Nebraska, USC, and Michigan, all going 5-4 in the conference. But Nebraska finishing the year off 8-4, whereas USC and Michigan are at 7-5. But all these teams kind of have the same storyline. Lots of potential, lots of good players and high expectations, but a tough schedule with a couple key questions that keep them from really moving into the upper tier in the Big Ten, in our opinions. Now, a lot of people are still high on some of these teams, particularly Michigan is going to be the one a lot of people are expecting to finish a lot higher in the standings. But we think with a pretty tough Big Ten schedule with a brand new freshman quarterback that they might struggle early on offense and won't have enough time to fight back into the standings. USC just has a really tough schedule and need their offensive playmakers to carry them if the defense cannot continue to be very good. And then Nebraska's just lost a lot of their skill position players. It's going to be Dylan Raiola trying to establish connections with his new players, and we have to see if this defense can remain as strong as it was last year. But all these teams still have a lot of potential, and I wouldn't be surprised if they can move up in the Big Ten standings once the season actually starts. But for us, we think they are pretty solid and will finish in the middle of the standings here.
And just as a quick note, we did follow the Big Ten tie-breaking procedures for this 5-4 tiebreaker, as well as all of the other ones where head-to-head did not play a factor. So Michigan, despite beating Michigan State, loses this tiebreaker. If you want to really read into it, you can go check the Big Ten tie-breaking rules. Just know that we did, in fact, follow them, and this is how it plays out based on our predictions. Now, we had no teams finish 4-5 in the Big Ten, but two at 3-6, UCLA and Iowa, both teams that people think are going to be really good and end up disappointing this season. And they could end up being in very similar boats because UCLA has Nico Iamaleava, a very solid quarterback. Iowa has Mark Gronowski, and it seems like he's going to have a pretty solid year. But both teams end up with disappointing records despite that because they don't have enough weapons on the offense to help out their quarterback. They're going to have decent defenses. Iowa's obviously much better than UCLA's, but In the end, I don't think it's going to end up mattering for these teams as they end up missing bowl games.
There's one singular team that gets 2 wins in the conference, and that is Rutgers. And that's just due to the fact that Athan Kaliakmanis is going to be carrying this team on his back, doing it just about everything. And he does get the benefit of playing some of the weaker teams in the Big Ten. That's why they end up getting 2 wins in the conference, but the rest of the schedule is absolutely brutal. So no real room for movement for the Scarlet Knights. And then Wisconsin is in an even worse boat, having a brutal schedule. Their end to the season has them going up against like the top 5 teams in the Big Ten this year. It's just a horrible schedule for the Badgers. The one singular win is once again because they play one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, which is this next tier of Northwestern, Purdue, and Maryland. Northwestern's singular win is because they do get to play Purdue, who have absolutely no one returning outside of their starting running back. And then Purdue and Maryland really have absolutely no chance. If they played each other, one of them might be able to get a conference win. But essentially, the bottom 4 teams in the Big Ten just have such horrible schedules with not a lot of room for error, and we don't see them improving very much to get more than just 1 win in the conference.
We'll move back to the top of the standings now to talk about this conference championship game, a regular season rematch where the Buckeyes did get the better of Penn State in what was sure to be a close game as they've been playing each other close for the last decade. Penn State has not beaten Ohio State since 2016, and this Big Ten championship is going to be a true test of how long they can go without actually beating Ohio State because the Buckeyes and Penn State are very similar talent-wise. Penn State has more returning production than Ohio State this year. We had Ohio State winning this regular season game. I think when you take it to a neutral site, that the Penn State Nittany Lions will get their revenge and become Big Ten champions this season.
And this just stems from the fact that it's so difficult to beat the same team twice in a year, especially when you go from a home game to a neutral site. Like Jonah said, bringing in Jim Knowles after just being at Ohio State, if he can't get the job done in the first game against the Buckeyes, he will for sure have a better game plan to neutralize every possible advantage that Ohio State has and bring out the best in the Penn State defense to secure a Big Ten championship here. James Franklin finally gets his big win of his career, getting a win over the Buckeyes, getting a Big Ten championship here, and setting them up in very good shape to secure a top seed in the college football playoffs, considering Ohio State finished the year off undefeated and Penn State's lone loss was to Ohio State. But you will have to stick around until we release our college football playoff predictions based off of our predictions for this season, which will be released on August 19th. So until then, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our content, and we will see you in the next video.